Hello friends! Welcome to Coding Garden with CJ. Today's episode, we are going to build an interactive CLI tool with Node.js. The idea behind this. What is an interactive CLI tool? So if you have ever used like the Vue CLI, so let's say you wanted to create a Vue app. If you do npx vue/CLI create demo, when this thing runs, it asks you questions, right? It's like, do you want to include Babel? Do you want to include the router, etc., etc. So this is an example of an interactive CLI tool, if it'll run. What are some other ones? Maybe someone in the chat has an example of it, but once this gets going, I'll show an example of it. But that's what we're going to build today. We're basically going to build a tool that people can install from NPM and then run the command from their terminal. It'll ask them questions and it'll do something useful for them. So here it is. So once you get the Vue CLI popped up, it asks you, do you want to choose a preset? You can say manually select features. You can check things on or off. I'm not going to actually generate this app, but this is just an example of an interactive CLI tool. It asks you questions in the terminal, and then it does something useful. Another example of this is ESLint. So if you do ESLint --init, it will ask you questions about your coding style and then generate an ESLint file for you. So it says, how would you want to use it? What style of code are you using? Do you use these? So it's asking questions, and then it uses all of your answers to do something useful. And that's what we're going to do today. Cool. So the thing we're going to build is something called now config. So a couple of days ago, I did a live stream on how to deploy with now version 2. And the thing about deploying with now version 2 is it requires a configuration file. So I thought it'd be useful to make a CLI tool where you can answer some questions and it will automatically generate that configuration file for you. And the way to use it, you're just going to type now config in the terminal and it will just work. It's going to be great. Okay, let's say hello to all the people in the chat. Hello, Takadine, welcome to the stream. Hello, Hexception, you're back. Hello, Rabbitworks, who says cheers from the cabin. Are you on vacation? That's pretty cool if you are. Hello, Salman, welcome to the stream. Hello, Daniel. Hello, Spacey. Hello, Danielle. Hello, Drake. Hello, Anaboth. Welcome, welcome. Hello, Vias. Hello, BSC. Hello, Shivam. Hello, Wally Oxen. Hello, Nessie. Hello, Ran. Hello, Brett. Hello, Alicia. Hello, Gulen, who said ESLint in it for the first time. Yeah, so I asked a second ago, what are some tools that do that? And I showed it. ESLint is one. It asks you questions, and then it generates a config. So we're going to build something very similar. Hello, Andreas. Welcome to the stream. Hello, Eric. Hello, Blaums. Cool. So this is going to be fun. And our first task is to choose a library that we're going to use for, I guess we're not necessarily going to have any arguments here. You might have seen command line tools before where you can say, you can pass in commands like type is express or something like that. I think the way we're going to do this is there aren't going to be any arguments. It's just going to ask you questions. So you run the command and then it asks you questions and then you have to answer them in the terminal. So we don't necessarily need argument parsing, but we do need user interaction. And there are actually quite a few libraries out there that help you with building tools like this. Let's show a few. So Inquirer.js is a very popular one. Let's see if they have some examples. You can bring it in, you can prompt. They have lots of different question types. Let's see. Questions. So questions can be a confirm, so that's like a yes or no. It can be a list of options. It can be a checkbox. It can be a password where it hides the input. Lots of different things that you can ask the user. Let's see. Yeah, and this is an example of like what might happen. So if you run it, it'll ask you, what do you want to do now? The user types in order a pizza, and then it takes in their answer and decides what to do next. In this case, it asks them the question, what size do you need? And then it gives them a single select list where they can choose what size pizza they need. So this tool is all about that interaction in the terminal. There's also one called Commander.js, and I believe Commander is all about parsing arguments. This one isn't necessarily interactive, I don't think. Let me search for, like, yeah, it's not interactive, but it's still very useful because you might have seen CLI tools like this before. So, like, for example, this is creating a program for ordering pizza, and it doesn't ask the user questions. They just have to specify all of the params up front. So, for example, let's see. I think they showed a nice output of it. Yeah, so like this. You could type pizza -- peppers -- pineapple, and that will create a pizza with peppers and pineapple, but it's not going to ask the user anything. Yeah, so Commander is really cool. I found one today that's called Caporal, and this one is like a all-inclusive kind of thing. So this has interactive prompts, it has argument parsing, it has other cool things built in, like if they accidentally type an argument incorrectly, it'll suggest and say, did you mean this given argument? It's built on top of a couple of other tools, like the Winston logger and like a colors library. So you can have cool things like this. So this is an example of a usage message. If you run your program, it'll tell you how to use it, what commands are available, what are your options, and it generates all that based on the options that you pass into it when you're writing your code. So that one's cool. And then I found this one, which is called Yargs Interactive. I've actually used Yargs before. So Yargs, matey, is a pirate-themed argument parser. So this Yargs library is specifically just for parsing arguments, like -- init or -- type. This library can take those in and give you a nice usable object with those inside of it. But Yargs Interactive is a combination of the argument parser and inquirer, so that it allows you to build interactive prompts that can also take in arguments that are like default. So I thought this one was really pretty cool, and I was thinking of using this one, but I actually think I'm gonna go with inquirer. Mainly because I've decided that we're not going to have any command line arguments. It's just going to ask questions. So we don't really need an argument parser. We just need sort of like an interactive prompt. So Inquirer.js, Commander.js, Caporal.js, Yargs Interactive. I'm sure there are a lot of other ones out there. These are some of the most popular for doing this with Node and JavaScript. So you can check those out. But I am going to be using Inquirer. And I guess the other thing is, when I did the live stream a couple of days ago talking about Now V2, I created lots of different examples. So we're pretty much going to be pulling from here to see the types of configurations that we're going to generate. Cool. So choose a library. We're going to use Inquirer. And the CLI is going to work like this. So first, it's going to check and see if there already is a now.json in the directory that you're in. And if it is, it's just going to throw an error and say, hey, you already have one. You don't need to run this tool. Then it's going to say, what's the name of the project? It'll default to the current directory. It'll then ask, what's the type of the project? And it'll be a single select list, so the user will be able to choose one. And then we may only ask this question depending on the type. Like if it's React, Vue, or static build, or even static, these don't necessarily have an entry point. If it's static, we may need to ask what is the directory that you're trying to deploy. But basically, we need to ask a question specific to the one that they chose. We'll allow the user to specify aliases. If they specified React, Vue, or static build, we actually need to update their package JSON with a now build script. So we can do that automatically for them if they would allow us. And then after it's all done, we can automatically deploy the project for them if we want to. So this is what we're going to build. It's going to be so much fun. Let's catch up on the chat because I am talking a lot. Cool. Hello, Bafana, who says it's 2:40 a.m. in South Africa. I always tell everyone, go to sleep. But if you can't sleep, come hang out. Hello, Steven. Welcome to the stream. Hello, Clay. Joe says morning for those in Europe, evening for most others. Yeah, for me it's the evening. It's about oh yeah, you can see my time right here. It's 18:47. Hello, Davi. Welcome to the stream. Hello, Raul, who says, nice to have you back, CJ, watering the garden. Let's see. Hexception says, can't wait to use this. Yeah, this will be really useful. I was surprised because I searched around to see if there was anything like it. Because the now CLI comes with now init, but that actually just generates an entire project. This is only going to create a configuration file. It's not going to create a project or anything like that. Cool. Hello, Carlos. Carlos asks, do you have a beginner tutorial for Vue.js? Just search my channel for Vue.js. If you look at, I have build a to-do app with Vue.js. That's definitely for beginners. I have a video called Vue.js Appstravaganza where I build like 5 different fairly simple apps to kind of show the concepts in Vue. So yeah, search my channel. Hello, Alan. Big love, heart. Hello, Fenton, who says, I love you, garden. Cool. Amal is asking if I've ever tried Neodoc. I haven't. Maybe I'll look into that later. Yeah, and Spacey asked the question, what if someone wants to use it to override an existing config file? Maybe ask to override? Yeah, we can do that. So check if now.js already exists, and then ask if they want to override. Because maybe they have one, but it's not correct or something like that. So yeah, we can do that. Oh, I'm always saying that Neodoc is, creates POSIX stocks. That's interesting. Hello, Topher. Welcome to the stream. Hello, author. Good night from Brazil. And hello, Kasaba, who says the Trello series was awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I definitely, a lot of people have requested it. I need to do more videos on that one. Hello, Sunmeet. And hello, Christian from Iceland. Awesome. Okay, let's get this thing started. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to npm init in this directory. So that will create a package JSON for us. Let's update our package JSON. The name is going to be now config. The version will be 1.0. Something just fell. I don't know quite what that was. Not important though. For the description, let's pull in this sentence right here. As CLI to help generate a now.sh configuration file. Cool. The main is going to be index.js. Let's put it in a source directory. And then, actually don't think we need any scripts because we're not really ever going to do like an npm start. People are just going to call this thing directly. So we'll get rid of that. So that's good enough for now. We have our now config. Let's create that source directory. Inside of it, we'll create our index.js. This is where all of our code is going to go, all of our interactive code. And for now, I'm just going to log work in progress. Cool. So we have our JavaScript file. We have our package JSON. Great. Let's go ahead and git init this thing. I'm going to add a git ignore for Node. So git ignore you can install globally from npm, but it's a nice little tool that generates git ignore files. So that has all the stuff we would want to ignore. And then I'm going to add everything. Cool. And now I'm going to publish it. So let me take a quick stretch, but I don't want to take too long because someone might take this package name. So I'm just going to do now publish, and hopefully nobody's taken that. Oh, not now. npm publish. Hopefully nobody's taken that name now config. This operation requires a one-time password. Okay, I am going to hide my screen. I think I have to, you know what? I set up two-factor auth. I have to check my email whenever I'm publishing a package to npm. Those of you watching, please don't steal this package name. I should have already published something there. One-time password. You know what? I don't know if I set that. How did I set this up? Oh, okay. I need to figure this out. Profile settings. Enabled. Oh, do I have my two-factor auth app? I think I do. Yeah, I do. So if you've ever used two-factor auth on pretty much like any online service, NPM has that enabled. So I entered my one-time password, and it published. Cool. So if we go to NPM, and I totally realize I'm publishing an empty package, but I wanted to do that really quick just to make sure that I have the package name, but it's there. And so right now, if you tried to run this tool, it's just gonna log work in progress, or yeah. Let me get to it real quick. Cool. Yoinked. How many of you were trying to steal that package name? Cool. So it's there, and technically, if I did this, check it. If I did npx now-config. Oh, not that. It's gonna pull it down, run the main file. Oh no, command not found. Cool. I'll need to add the command later so that npm knows what to do when you just run the command. But regardless, I now have the package name. Great. Step 1 done. Now let's actually code this thing. Okay. So for this, we need to install Inquirer. And for that, we could just do npm install Inquirer. Cool. Okay, so now that we have Inquirer, let's look at their kind of like their getting started. So we require an Inquirer, we prompt it, and then we get back our answers. So that's cool. Let's just take this basic example and do it right here. So we'll say const Inquirer equals require Inquirer. We need to pass it questions. Let's see if we can find some examples of like questions to ask. Let's see. We might actually, I think in this repo, I think there are examples somewhere. Let's see. Examples. Check out packages, Inquirer, examples. We can look at the pizza example that has the question, is this for delivery? So here we go. Just gonna put one nice little question right there. Type confirm the name is human, and we're going to ask, are you a human? And then we get back the answers, and for now, let's just log out those answers. Okay, so super simple program right now. It's just gonna ask us, are you a human? It defaults to false, and then it gives us back the answers. So if I run my code, so if I do node source index.js, it should ask me, are you a human? I'm going to say yes. And then we get back an object that says, is human true? So that's great. So we ask the questions, and then we get an object full of all of their answers. Super awesome. So if we look back at our README, the first thing we want to do is to check if now.json already exists. So we should probably do that before we do like any prompting or anything like that, because that can actually determine the first question that we ask them. So let's do this. We'll use fs, which is the file system core package in Node. I was thinking I was going to use fs promises, but this may not work on everyone's machine if they're not using the latest version of Node. So let's look up, just a second. Let's look up, lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, an FS library that handles, that has promises. Oh yeah, I think there's FS extra. Yeah, adds methods that aren't included in the native FS. Curious if it has them built in as promises. I don't know. Anyone watching, has anyone used an FS package that supports promises? There might be like FS as promised. FS async. Published 4 years ago. FS extra promise? I could create my own promises. Let's just use the built-in FS. We're not going to install a separate library. Okay, so let's bring in FS. Require FS. And for those of you that missed it, there is a promises API built into the latest version of Node. But what I was saying is I don't want this to not work on someone else's machine if they're not using the latest version of Node. So we'll just use the regular plain old FS. And then we'll do this. We'll say fs dot exists, and this will take well, actually, we can do it synchronously because this whole thing's going to be blocking anyway. Yeah, we'll do it synchronously. We don't have to wait for the response. So we'll do exists sync, and then we are just looking for a file that is called now.json, and we'll say existing config is going to equal to that. Cool. And so now we need really like an array of all the questions. So let's create an array called of questions. And right here we'll say if existing config, we're going to say questions. Well, actually, I'm thinking we might split this up into two separate prompts, because if it is an existing config, they might say, no, I don't want to replace it, and then we don't want to ask the rest of the questions. So for now, I'm just going to have actually two different inquirers. Let's do this. So if there is an existing config, we're going to say inquirer.prompt, and the name is overwrite, and the message is, we have it, what are we going to say? Now.json already exists. Would you like to overwrite it? And the default answer is false. Then we're going to get back some answers, and then we'll say if answers.overwrite then we'll have like a continue variable. It's getting tricky because we have two promises. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to handle this. Let's see. Okay, so let's just do the basics to begin with. Okay. Does it exist? If there is an existing config, we're going to do this one. Else, we're going to do this one. And probably what I can do is create a function that has the other inquirer inside of it. And then if they do say overwrite, then we can call that function right here. That's probably what I will do. Cool. So we can create a function. Whoop. Let's see. We have a function called build config. Right now we're just going to log working. And so if they want us to overwrite, we're going to build the config. And if there wasn't an existing config, then we can just call build config. Easy enough. Else, we should just log goodbye. Goodbye. And we'll add like a little wave emoji. Okay. Let's see what happens. So if I run it again, it should just say working because one doesn't exist. But if I create a file, now.json, and then now I try to run it, let's take a quick stretch. Okay, if I run it, it should say, now.json already exists. Would you like to overwrite it? And then we'll say, no. And we'll say, goodbye. Cool. So we're getting there. That's awesome. But if they do say yes, now we can work inside of build config. Cool. I'm wondering if I should install like a logging library, because that could add like colors and stuff. Maybe we'll do that later. Okay, so now if we're ready to build the config, we need another inquirer. And the first question we want to ask is, what is the name of the project? So the type, I believe, is text. We'll double check that. And the name is name. And the message is, what is the name of the project? The default value is going to be the name of the directory that they are currently inside of. Because often, when you're trying to name a specific deployment, you call it the name of the directory that you're in. So let's do this. I believe you can get the current directory name, like dir name. Let's just log. This might actually be the full path. I'm not exactly sure of the way to get just the name of the directory that they're inside of. Let's just see what happens here. Yeah, so this gives us the full path. Oh no, that gives us the full path of the script. We want current working directory. Does fs have that? fs.get fs.current. Let's Google it. Node.js get the current working directory. How to get the CWD. Shell.js does it. I don't know if I want to install another dependency, but that could be an option. That's the same question. Process.cwd. Yeah, and that's different than dir name, because dir name is the location of the script that's running right now. We don't want that. We want the location that they're in. Yeah, so this would give us the directory that they're inside of. That's a good thing. Okay. Does path give us, can it give us like the name? Let's look and see what functions are on path. So path is a core module. Base name. Yep, this is what we want. Because if you say path.basename and pass in a full path, it's going to give you the name itself. Cool. So we'll bring in path. And now we'll say the default is path.basename of process.current working directory. Okay. So this is going to ask, what is the name of the project? It defaults to the name of the current working directory. Let's see what happens. Okay. Now.json already exists. Would you like to overwrite it? Yes. What is the name of the project? And look at that. So it defaults to the name of the current working directory. And if I hit enter, it uses that as the name. If we do it again, I can actually type something different, like my cool project, and it'll use that as the name. So awesome. One thing down. Okay, so we have the name of the project, and we are defaulting to the current directory. Next is what type of project? Okay. Question number 2. And I'll have to look this up to see how do I specify a list of options where they can only choose one? So the name here is going to be type. The question we're asking is what type of project? And let's go to the Inquirer docs and look up how do we specify a list of options? Does the pizza example specify a list? Yeah, so in this example, they're asking what size do you need? And the type is list, and then you give it a choices, which is an array of options. So our type is list, and then our choices are an array of strings, and these are our choices. Here. Cool. So those are the choices that we're going to give them. Yeah, let's see what happens. Okay. Run the file. Yes, overwrite it. What is the name of the project? I'll use the current directory. Ooh, look at that. Nice. What type of project? We are deploying a React app. Cool. We're making progress. That's awesome. So the next thing is we need to ask like project specific questions. So this is where like we basically have like branching paths. So if they choose Node Express, we need to ask them what is the path to the main file that has like app.listen inside of it. If they choose static, we need to ask them what is the name of the directory that they're trying to deploy. If we do React or Vue, we actually don't have to ask them anything because we can default to how both Vue and React work. So we can have some default options. Static build would need to ask what directory does it build to. And then Lambda would need to ask for the entry point. So each one has possibly like different questions. Here's what we'll do. Let's look at these configurations and let's just do it one by one. So we're going to first handle if the answer is Node Express. So if we look at our Node Server Express example and we look at its now.json, really the question we need to ask is what goes right here? What's the main file? And then we need to specify that main file right there as well. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have like the base configs in a file here, and then we're going to read it in so that way we can write it out to a file. Okay, so let's create a new file. We'll call it configs.js. We'll create a Node Express config. It's going to equal that. And later on, we'll specify other ones. And then we're just going to export all of them. So we're going to export an object that has each of them on it. But like I said, I'm only handling Node Express right now. Cool. I just realized I don't have a linter locally, so I definitely want to go ahead. I want to set that up. Before I do that, let's catch up on the chat. Let's see. Yeah, Kasaba did recommend FS Extra. I wasn't sure if that had the regular methods with promises. I think the way we figured out how to do it was totally fine. Like, I was thinking we wanted to use promises, but typically you only want to, typically you use promises because you don't want to block. And if you do something like exists sync or write file sync, that actually like blocks the process. But in this case, we don't care if it blocks because we want it to do this before we even prompt the user. So I'm okay with just using the synchronous method. Oh, Hexception has a unrelated question, but what program do you use for arrow-like snapping? You might have seen me do this. Left, right, top, bottom, left, smaller, bigger, top, top, no. What, I forget the key combination. Is it, yeah, top left, top right, bottom right, half the screen. For this, I use an app called Spectacle. It's for Mac only. There are other ones out there, but this one's free, and I have all of the keyboard shortcuts memorized, so I use it. I've been using it for like 2 years now, 2-3 years. Cool. Nessie is asking, how do I get those emojis to pop up? That's actually just a Mac OS X thing. On a Mac, if you press Command Control Space, you get an emoji menu, and that's anywhere, not just VS Code. On Windows 10, I think you can press Windows key period, and you'll get the emoji menu. Yeah, Kelly is saying, run all your prompts as async functions so nobody can tell which question they're answering. Yeah, it'll be all out of sync. We could write a command line tool that just like trolls people. I don't know. Yeah, Alvaro is asking, wouldn't committing now be fine? Yes, so after I, remind me, and I'm going to try to remember, but I'm going to set up the linter, and then I'll go ahead and commit and push the code up so you guys can take a closer look. Yeah. Oh, and that's a good call, Murphy. If they're using Node Express, we can actually look at their package JSON to see if they have a main file specified, and we can use that as the default. That's a good idea. So if they have a main property, that's going to be the default value. Otherwise, we ask them for a value. Yeah, awesome. Okay, let's go ahead and install ESLint. Going to init it. Enforce code style, we are using require and exports. We're not using reactor view. Our code is running inside of Node. We'll use the Airbnb style guide. JavaScript. Install that dependency. Yes, please. Actually, I just realized I should have installed ESLint as a dev dependency. Cool. That's easy enough to fix, though. Oh, no, it did it by default. Cool. That gave us our ESLint RC. Awesome. We can go ahead and add a lint script to our package JSON. ESLint source. Cool. And if we run our linter file, we've got 34 problems. Let's go ahead and just do automatic fix. Okay, and then now we just have warnings. So that, I'm sure that added like semicolons and trailing commas and stuff like that. But now, oh, and it fixed this file. This is one thing I wanted to fix. So this had like double quotes and stuff in it, and I wanted it to just be single quotes. Cool. Okay, where were we? We are here. We're currently working on creating the config for Node Express. Kelly had a really good suggestion that for this argument right here, we should look in their package JSON. We can definitely do that. Let's do it. So let's do this. So our configs are actually going to only have like those things that they need. And we'll create like a base config. So we'll call this like config. We're going to default to version as 2. And then as they answer the questions, we can then take their answers and put them into this config. But what I want to do here is say, so we get back the answers. We'll say config.name equals answers.name. And then I'm going to have different functions for each of the different types. So let's just do a switch on answers.type. Because if the type is Node Express, then we want to handle the Node Express stuff. If it's static, we'll handle that. So We'll have the case where the type is Node-express. And if that's the case, we'll say, what will we say? Well, we're going to have a function. We'll say like Node express config with the config. So it's going to make updates like that. We'll just handle that for now. And then we definitely want to break. So we're going to have other cases when we start working on those other things, but I'm going to focus on Node Express. So we'll have a function called Node Express config, which is going to modify the properties inside of it, and also ask the proper questions. Cool. So let's create this function, Node Express config. And actually, I guess we can, let's build these independently, just so we don't have a ton of code in one file. Let's do this. Okay, we're gonna have a folder that's called configs, and then inside of there we'll have a file called Node Express. And this is going to export a function, but inside of there is where we'll specify this config. I think I like this better. So instead of having this configs file, we're going to have a separate file with functions for each. So we'll say function node express, which takes in a config. Well, it takes in the let's call this the base config. Takes in the config, and for now, super simply, we'll just return all of the values in the config with all of the values in our base config. So this is just using the spread operator to combine the config object that we passed in, which currently has like name and version, and it's going to put all of those properties onto it. We're going to want to do other things like ask the question to know what to overwrite that with, but for now, let's just do this and see what happens. So we have that function. Let's require it in. So we go into the configs and grab the Node Express file. And then here we'll call it. And then after all of this, we're just going to log what does the config look like after that thing has all of that has run. So let's try it. Run the file. It already exists. Do you want to overwrite it? Yes. What is the name of the project? Now config. What type? We could try another one, but right now we've only set it up for Node Express. And then we get Node Express is not a function. Good call. This thing needs to export it. So we'll say module.exports equals Node Express. Cool. I'm just going to remove that now.json right now so it stops asking us if we want to overwrite it. So go, that's the name, Node Express, and oh, it didn't work. I realize now what we have to do. Quick stretch. So yeah, this is returning the config. We could actually, yeah, so because this is returning a new object with all of those properties, right here we actually want to say config equals Node Express config. So Node Express config takes the current config, which just has name and version. It then adds all of these properties to it and returns a new object with the combined. And then that new object we're going to reassign into config. And because of that, we need to make this a let, so that way we can overwrite it. And then we should get a config that has everything inside of it. Let's try again. That's our name, Node Express. There we go. So now we have kind of like that base config. Great. Okay. Now we can have a custom inquirer in here that asks the questions like, where is the entry point, and things like that. So We're going to pull in inquirer into this file, and then we're going to have another inquirer. And actually, I realize now this is going to be an async function, so we'll need to like await it. That's fine. And actually, I can await it like this. So we'll make this async. We'll say answers equals await inquirer.prompt. This here is going to be, the name is going to be main. Here we'll say what is your express, what is the path to your express entry point. So the entry point is the file that has like app.listen inside of it. So that's the question we're going to ask. And then the default is going to be either main from the package JSON, or I'll default it to like source index if that's not specified. And then once we have the answer, we can do something with it. But let's just see how this all is going to work. I think what we'll do right here is require in the package their package JSON. So let's say package JSON equals require. Actually, this could break if they don't have a package JSON. So let's do this. We're gonna do a try catch. We'll say let main equal source / index.js. So that's gonna be like the default. And then we're gonna try to pull in their package JSON. We're gonna require package.json in the current directory. If it doesn't exist, we're kind of just gonna swallow the error. Otherwise, we'll say main is gonna equal package.json.main. And if we look at our package JSON, it does have this main property. Cool. Yeah, and then we're just gonna swallow that error because we have our default value there. Cool. Let's fix some things. I'm going to ignore. So typically, it does not like requiring in the middle of a file, but I don't want to require this at the top, because if they don't have a package JSON, then the whole thing will just break. So I want to do this in a try catch. I think this is saying I should use destructuring. The only thing is, will this work? Yeah, I don't think so. I think I need to do that. Let's call it main file, just so it doesn't complain about that. We're going to default to the main file, have our answers, and for now, we're just going to log out our answers. Okay, so it's going to call this function. This thing is going to pull in the package JSON if it exists. Why is this complaining? Empty block statement. I also want to disable that too. We're doing all kinds of weird things that do not agree with the Airbnb config. Then we're going to ask them, what is the path to your express entry point? We'll give them the default. And for now, we'll just log it all out. Because I changed this to an async function, I actually need to await the result right here. Like this. And now that I'm thinking about it, we should just make all of this async await, because it's 2019 and that's just what we do. So we're gonna say answers equals await that, and then this becomes an async function. Cool. This is at the top level, so we do have to .then it, but in here, it can just call the async function. All right, let's see what happens. Did I make any errors? What is the name of the project? Node Express. What is the path to your express entry point? So notice it defaulted to source / index.js. Let's change what we have in our package JSON. So here, let's just say like source slash path to thing slash what. And let's see if it pulls that value in. So let's try it again. Yes, yes. It didn't work. Oh, it could be, yeah, I actually need, so it's not a relative path. This needs to be a full path. So we actually need to do like process.current working directory plus package.json. Otherwise, it's trying to find the package.json where this script is running from, and we don't want that. So let's try this again. Yes, Node Express. There we go. So if they had it specified, it's going to default to that, and then we can use that. We're making progress. Okay. Oh, Alvaro asked me to commit. I'm sorry, I didn't commit. Let's... I'll go ahead and commit. I don't care where we are. So much has changed. I'm gonna put my package.json back to that. Cool. And is my README up to date? Yeah, we're currently working on project-specific questions. We did ask what type of project. Okay, let's commit. So like a worker with a hard hat. Worker construction. Work in progress. And let's create a Git repo. Go! Awesome. Okay. Copy. My keyboard is not my shared clipboard is not working like it used to. Let me get you that link. There you go. Cool. And I appreciate everyone's telling me like this is gonna break on Windows, and there are definitely gonna be people that use this on Windows. So let's try and mitigate that. So right here, I'm doing a forward slash here, but on Windows they actually have backslashes, I think. So for that, we can actually use path.join, and it'll be OS specific. We'll do path.join the current working directory. And package.json. Cool, good call. Let's catch up on the chat. See if there's anything else. Hello, Issa. Welcome to the stream. Hello, Andy. It's been a while. Hello, Gorkum. Yeah, so someone just asked, who just asked? Was it Hexception? Yeah, Hexception just asked, what the heck does GSS mean? GSS is an alias. So I have a bunch of aliases set up. If you're using Zish, this is actually enabled by default. It may not be that exactly, but there are a lot of Git aliases. But this is just an alias for Git status. Maybe there's a smaller Git status that's like less information. And then like GA is Git add all, Git commit with a message. But I have all of those aliased to the actual Git commands. If you go to my GitHub profile / dot files, you can see my bash profile, and you can see all of my aliases. So GSS is actually git status -s, which is like a smaller version of git status. Cool. Joe is asking why the switch from the npm site to GitHub. So they're kind of like two separate things. So GitHub is going to keep track of all the commits of my source code. So like all my changes over time, they're going to be logged here, and all of that will exist on GitHub, accessible from anywhere in the world. When you publish to npm, that is like a snapshot of the library. And so if you ever look on npm, let's just look up view. It has lots of different versions. So like 268, 269, 2610. There's some like beta versions, but typically when people are installing your packages, they want a specific version for consistency, because as the version changes, things in the library might change. So anytime you publish to npm, you have to actually increment that version number. So right now, if we look at my packages, and we look at now config, it's currently version 1.0. So this is a snapshot of what my code looked like when I publish this. If I want to publish it again, I'm gonna have to up the version to either 1.1 or 1.0.1. And then when I publish, it's gonna be that specific version. So npm is like a snapshot with specific versions. GitHub is storing the entire Git history. And then by pushing to npm, it's much easier for people to install and use my package as well. Cool. Topher is asking, why do you install a linter every time rather than keeping it installed as a code extension? I mean, technically I have the ESLint extension, but the config is potentially different for every project. So that's really the main reason, is like each project directory has its own specific settings. I used to have a git config like in my, an ESLint RC in my home directory, and then any project that didn't have one would use those settings. But I like to push these. Whoa, what just happened? Go away. I like the ESLint RC to actually be inside of the Git repo, so that way if anyone else pulls my code down, they know how to lint their file before like making a pull request or something like that, rather than using their own settings. So that's really the main reason. Okay, I digress. Where were we? Here. Okay, so we updated path.join. We're bringing in the package JSON. It's specifying the main file. That's great. But now that we have the main file, we need to overwrite it inside of our base config here. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to say base config dot builds at 0 dot src equals answers dot main file. Let's take a quick stretch. Okay, so we've overridden that one with the file that they specified. And then we need to do the same thing for routes. So we'll say base config dot routes at 0 dot destination equals that same thing. Okay, so we ask them this question. We then update that base config with whatever they specified. Then we return an object that has the configs combined. Then when we come back over here, we should have the latest config with all of that information inside of it. So let's give it a try. So if we do node source index, what's the name of your project? Now config. We're going to do node express. What is the path to your express? I'm just going to override it to see what happens. We'll do like what, who, when, where, .js. and then it breaks. So you can see that it did overwrite it. We have undefined here. But for some reason we didn't get oh, that's why. So in my configuration, I said the name is main. So I actually need to do answers.main. So that will be whatever the user typed in. Let's try again. Now config Node Express. What? Who? Huh? .js. Cool. So now the config has the source directory, has the destination, and it's updated to their specific entry point. Awesome. We're making progress. Cool. So that's the only question it's not exactly the only question we need to ask for Express. It is possible to have multiple builds in here. So we could also add a static build for like the public directory if it exists. I think I'm going to leave it this simple for now, and then later on I might update it, or I'll accept pull requests. But this is just going to be a basic Express config. Cool. Now let's handle if they are trying to do a static website. So we'll do very similar. The case where the type is static, and then we need to run our static function, which doesn't exist yet, and we will create it. So it's going to be very similar to this, but it's going to be called static. And then in our configs, we want a new file called static.js. And it's going to look very similar, but different. So now we'll need to update it for a static. And I don't think we're going to need to look at the package JSON. We're going to call this static. We're going to export something called static. But now let's get our base config from our examples repo. So this is on the coding garden. Now v2 examples, and we want the static example. Cool. This one's fairly simple. Looks like my linter isn't working. I'm going to quit code and reopen it. Oh, there we go. The keyword static is reserved. We'll call it static config. Cool. And then in here, we need to bring in static config. Rename this. Cool. All right, we're gonna lint this file. And the question that we need to ask if it's a static site is, what is the directory? So if it's the current directory, we're just gonna do star. Otherwise, we're gonna do whatever directory they specify /star. And I don't believe we're gonna need to get anything from their package JSON, so we can get rid of that. Yeah, so here, let's call this public, because it's like the public directory. And the default is just going to be the empty string. So what's the question we asked? Like, what folder would you like to deploy? And I guess by default, we'll do dot, which we can then do like dot slash, because if we do dot slash star, then that'll be everything in the current directory, and that actually should work. So we'll default it to just a period. If they specify a directory, then we need to put a /* on the end of it. So here's what we'll do. So we ask them, what folder would you like to deploy? We're defaulting to the current directory. And then we need to override the base config builds.source to be answers dot, let's call this dir or directory. Answers.directory plus *. And actually, we should use path.join for this. So we'll say path.join answers.directory and then *. Hopefully that works. I don't know if path.join can have like a weird asterisk in the path name. We'll see. Then we update the config and return it. So let's try it out, but this time we'll specify static config. What's this complaining about? Expected a default case. Default is to just break. Cool. All right, let's try it. Nope, not that. We're going to try to do static. What folder would you like to deploy? We're just going to default it to period. And if you, okay, I think that's okay, because if I do path.join period with *, technically is just *. Let's try some other things to make sure that that's still working. Try again. Yes. Do static. Public. Yeah. Public /*. So whatever directory name that they type in, it's going to put /* on the end so that the whole thing, that whole directory will be deployed. I'm wondering though. I'm using path.join, but does now.json actually have to have / instead of backslashes on Windows? I don't know. Somebody on Windows can try it out and tell me if it breaks or not. So yeah, that's good. I think that's all we'll do for public for now. So perfect. Okay, next up is React. We'll create a function called React. Just gonna copy this, rename it to React, and then we'll go and grab our base config here. And this is our base config. Let's fix it. Rename this function. And actually, so for React, what we want to ask them is, we will ask them what is the directory that they build to, because if you're using create React app, it defaults to build, but maybe they overrode that somehow, so it would be good to ask them what directory they build to. Okay, so what is the build directory? And we're going to default to just be build, like that, but they can overwrite it. And then the other question that we want to ask them is, should we add a now build script to their package.json? So, and let me just double check. Did I leave? Yeah, I accidentally left the name and the version in here. I don't want that. That should just be builds. Okay, But here we'll ask, what is the build directory? And then we just need to override it. So we'll say builds at 0.config.distr equals answers.directory. Cool. And then the other question is, this is going to be a confirm. Do you want to add a now build script to your package.json? Default is true. And the name here is going to be add build script. Because if you're deploying an app to now with static build, your package JSON needs a script in it called now build that tells it how to build. Yeah. So if they answer true, we need to update the package JSON. Also, if they answer true, I want them to specify what is the build command, because it could be npm run build, but they may prefer yarn run build, and I would want them to override that if they need to. So I'm curious with Inquirer if there's a way to like add a question only if confirm is true. Let's see. Let's look at like the confirm examples. Is there like a depend? Is there like a nested? I may just have to do like another prompt based on what they how they answer. For example, you can dynamically add questions to be asked. So inquire.prompt, at some point in the future, push new questions. And then when you're done, complete. Maybe we do that? Yeah, someone just, I just looked at the chat. Conditional? No, I don't see anything. Yeah, and let me catch up on the chat because I've been typing a lot. Spacey is asking, would it be a bad idea to do something like require config/type instead of manually doing a switch and bringing them in manually? Not necessarily. I don't know if I want to though, and that's really just like a gut feeling. But their suggestion is instead of requiring all of these up at the top like this, we technically could require them like only when we need them, based on the name. And that way we actually wouldn't have to do a switch. It's an interesting suggestion. I think we'll look at that once we've asked all of the, we've done all the different types, then we can maybe try to refactor it. Cool. Kelly is saying you should check to see if they already have a now build script. That's a good point too. So really we only want to ask this question if they don't have a now build script. But actually, we might prompt them to overwrite it, because if they have a now build script, what if it's wrong? Like, what if they specified it wrong? Need to collect my thoughts. Just think for a second. Yeah, because there's lots of different branching conditions here. So like, do you want to add it? Okay, but what if they don't have a package JSON? Do we just like exit and say error, your package JSON is missing? How do we handle it? I think we'll just do that, and I think we'll always ask it. Say, do you want to add? I'll say, do you want to add / update a now build script in your package JSON? And then if they have an existing now build value, we'll set that as the default. Otherwise, the default will be like npm run build. I think I like that. Okay. And similar to express, I think we want to do this try catch thing, where we now attempt to, well, actually only if they want to add the build script. So we get the directory, and then we can say if answers dot add build script, then we're going to try and read in their package JSON. So let's say build script, we're going to default it to npm run build. And then we're going to pull in their package JSON. If there is no package JSON, I think I'm just gonna exit. I'm gonna yeah, I'm just gonna do that. So I'm gonna do console.error package.json does not exist, and then process.exit 1, which means exit with an error. Okay, but if they do have a package JSON, we're gonna say, actually, I'll do this. We'll say build script is going to be package.json.scripts at now-build, or that, and technically we should check to make sure that they have a scripts property. So I'm going to do package.json.scripts or an empty object, and then that's going to give us the build script. So if they had one, we're going to pull in the existing value. And then we need to prompt them to see what do they want the value to be. We're going to default it to be this build script value, but we want to see if they would like to overwrite it. So we're going to have another inquirer. This is going to be, let's call this build answers. And we really only want to add one question, and the answer, it's going to be called build script. The question is, what is the build command? And then, well, no, the default is build script. So we're going to default to npm run build, but then we're going to ask them this question, and they'll have the ability to say, oh, it should be yarn run build, and then that's going to overwrite it. And so then right here, I'm going to say answers no, it'll be build answers dot build script. That's going to be the value. That's going to be the value that we need to set in the package JSON. So at this point, what we need to do is update the package JSON. So we've read it in here, so now we're going to start to modify it, and we're only modifying it in memory. We're then going to need to write it back to a file. So we'll say package.json.scripts equals itself or an empty object, because if they don't have script specified yet, we need to set it to an object. And then we'll say package.json.scripts at now-build is going to equal that. So that will set it, and then we need to write it back to itself. So let's store this path in a variable. Package JSON path is going to equal that. And then we'll use fs to write package JSON back to itself that with the now build script that we've added. So we'll pull in fs. And then I will do fs.write file sync. The path is going to be the package JSON path. The data is going to be json.stringify the package JSON. And we actually want it to maintain the spacing, but I won't know whether or not they have a 2 or a 4 space tab. So I could potentially overwrite their package JSON with a 2 space tab. That's fine. I don't care. And the encoding is going to be UTF-8. Cool. So if they answered yes to, do you want to add or update the now build script in your package JSON? We then attempt to read in the package JSON. If we didn't find it, we just exit and say it doesn't exist. If we did find it, we grab the existing value for now build, if it exists. Then we ask them, what do you want the build command to be? Then once they tell us what it is, we put that into the package JSON and then write it back to the file. Okay. So that's great. So that added the build script, but did we update the build directory? So this is builds --0.config distro. Yes, and we updated it there. Okay, so I think we're done with React. React will allow you to specify the build folder, and then it will allow you to add a build script if needed. Okay, let's try it. Now config. We're gonna do React. What is the build directory? I don't know. Let's do it as dist. Do you want to add/update a now build script to your package JSON? Do you want to add or update a now build script in your package JSON? I'll say in, not to. We'll say yes, go. What is the build command? I'm going to change it to yarn run build. Go. It did it. But now, if I look at my package JSON, it added it. Cool. That's awesome. Like I mentioned, I could potentially make some people mad because I'm defaulting to a 2 space tab, but you'll get over it. You probably won't even notice. And then our config has the name, it has the builds. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay. So that's React. What's next? Vue. Actually, Vue is going to be very similar to React. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. Yeah, because if we look at the React one, it's the exact same questions. The only difference is the default is dist instead of build. But I still potentially want to update their package JSON. Yeah, I want to reuse this function. Stretch. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rename this to FEF, front-end framework. It's going to take in the config and the default directory. Am I using that variable name anywhere? I'm not. So now this is going to default to that. And this is going to default to dist. So now I can reuse this function for both React and Vue. The only difference is with React, I'm going to pass in the default as build instead of dist. Okay, so let's rename this. And then in here, we need to do that. And we'll call fef, but we want to default to the build directory. And then in the case of Vue, we're going to default to the dist directory, which means we don't have to specify it. Okay, let's try it. So that's the name. We're going to try Vue. What is the build directory? Now it's defaulting to dist, so that's a good sign. Do you want to add or update a now build script in your package.json? We'll say yes. What is the build command? We're going to change it to npm run build. And you'll notice it defaulted to yarn run build because that's what's inside of my package.json right now. So we know that's working. We'll do that. And if we look back at our package.json, it updated it to npm run build. Great. Things are working wonderfully. And we can't see inside of here, but I'm assuming that this is going into the default directory. Let's just log it to be sure. So in fef, this. I want to log this to make sure that we are actually writing it. Vue dist, yes, npm run build, and it is dist. Awesome. Okay. Here's the thing. Our next option is static build, and it's the exact same thing as React and Vue. The only difference is you might specify a different build directory, so we can just reuse this function. Really, it's just for the user, like if they have because technically you could specify React or Vue, and because it's asking you the same questions, even if you're not using React or Vue, but you have a project that's working in a similar way, you could still technically specify that, but this will be nice just to have. So if they specify static build, then we just call that exact same function because it's the same thing. All right, the last one is Lambda. Is Lambda a reserved word? Maybe not. Create a new file called lambda.js. And let's look at our examples for our Lambda one. So this just has the name of the directory. You know what? I'm not going to do lambdas because I don't ever deploy lambdas, so I'm not even going to worry about coding them. And that way we can go ahead and get this thing done, at least for now. Maybe we'll add it in the future. We are not going to do lambdas. Delete. Cool. Okay, so at this point, we've handled all project-specific questions. Now let's do aliases. Yeah, and let's look at the now v2 documentation. Do you see what the aliases look like in the configuration? Domains and aliases, aliasing a deployment, configuration. Yeah, it can be an array of aliases. Cool. For this, we need to allow them to specify multiple things. Let's see how to do that with Inquirer. This is a raw list input. Oh, check it out. Look what I just found, though. This has a win. Answers.comments equals no pocket. So this would actually allow you to only ask a question if this thing returns true. That would definitely come in handy here. So like right here, we ask the question, what is the build command? The only thing is there's a lot of logic happening before it that like reads in our package JSON. So I'm going to leave it the way it is, but potential refactor for the future. Okay, I'm going to catch up on the chat because it's been a while since I looked over. Diego asks, hey CJ, how are you? I'm okay. Do you have any plans to go back with that live teaching your friend? So probably he's talking about Noob Quest with Tony. Was very helpful for me. Tony's actually really busy nowadays. He's working a job and he's going to college part-time to get a computer science degree. So he's very busy. But I've thought of bringing in potentially other people, like former students or some of my coworkers. So maybe. Definitely not no, and definitely maybe. Nessie is saying, wouldn't static need to be renamed? Let me make sure that I did not have any names. I'm not sure what you were referencing about static. So for React and Vue, you actually do want to use static build. It's just asking those questions to configure it for that. Joe just said, for a module to make a CLI simpler, it sure is struggling with conditional question responses. I think I just showed, like, they technically have it, and it looks fairly easy. You just do when. The only issue here is I have a lot of logic around that when because I want like a default value to be specified for that question. And I don't want to do all of this work up front unless I know that they actually are going to add the build script. So for my purposes, I think it's totally fine. But if you have something that's more synchronous and you're not doing a lot of extra stuff, like this when function probably will work just fine. Well, yeah, and Kelly just mentioned checking for package JSON should be done before asking any questions. We could, but yeah, because I guess technically if they're doing this, they need a package JSON because it is static build. So before we even ask what the build directory is, we could throw that error that package JSON doesn't exist. Yeah. Let's do it. Okay, I'm just gonna update that really quick. so we have this big old try catch. We're going to move some of the code, but for now I'm going to move this try catch all the way up. So we call this function, and then before they even answer either of these questions, we need to check and make sure that they have a package JSON. Okay, so we grab their package JSON, and we do this require. If the require fails, it's going to immediately exit. Otherwise, it's going to specify a default build script. So let's do this. We'll say let build script equals that. And then this question, we can actually move in to here. And this is going to be a when add build script is true. Get rid of that. Then we can say build script equals that. And then these 3 lines should only be done if they say add build script. Like so. Okay, so try to read it in the package JSON. If it doesn't exist, just immediately exit. If it does exist, we're going to hold on to the build script for now because we want to use that as a default if we do ask this question. And then this should specify a when. So we'll say when, and I think we get access to the answers, and we'll say answers dot add build script is true. Let's call it A. And if we look back at their examples, I think that's how this works. So it's a function that takes in the answers, and it can look at answers dot whatever and check to see if it's equal to something. And if this evaluates to true, then this question will be asked. So if add build script is true, then it's going to say what is the build command, and it's going to default to that. And then now answers dot build script is all we need. Cool. Let's try it. Let's try just static build. What is the build directory? Dist. Do you want to add a or update a now build script? Yes. What is the build command? npm what? And if we look at our package JSON, there's npm what. Cool. Let's see what happens if we don't have a package JSON. So I'm just going to rename this so it doesn't exist anymore, and then try running it. What's the name of your project? Static build. Package JSON does not exist, and then it immediately exits. Cool. Okay, I like this. I like what we're doing here. Okay. Catch up on the chat. Yeah, and Amal was saying they also found the when function, which is what we're using here to determine if this question should be asked. So, but let's test it with, okay, so there is a package JSON, but what if we say no to add a build script? No. Then it just finishes. Cool. So that what is the build command only gets asked if they said yes on this question. Cool. All right. We wanted to see how do we ask for multiple multiple inputs from them. So if I'm asking them, do you want to specify any aliases? So that's the next question. One or more. So they should be able to keep typing in aliases as many as they want, and that's all going to get put into an array. So I want to see, how do I do that? The type of prompt. So the prompt is just input. choices, validate, filter, transformer, page size. I'm not sure if it's possible. I may have to have some sort of loop that just keeps asking him the question again and again and keeps pushing into that aliases array. You know what? I've been streaming for an hour and 40 minutes. I'm just going to allow them to specify one alias. Would you like to specify an alias? Let's do it. We're just going to have more answers here. So and we are going to say type is text, name is specify alias, and then the message is would you like to specify an alias? Default is true. Oh, and all of this needs to be inside of an object. And this is where we can use that when thing again. And so here this will be we'll just call this alias. And then we'll say what is the alias? Default is probably do just answers.name. So because they specified a name before, we're going to default that to be the alias. But we only want to ask this question when a.specify alias is true. What else are we going to ask? Would you like to add now build to your package.json? We handled this. And it took quite a bit of work, but we did it. And then the last thing is, would you like to deploy? So, well, we can answer that in this batch of questions. Would you like to deploy right now? And so this is just going to be a confirm, yes or no. We'll default to false. Because I don't want to accidentally have them deploy when they really didn't want to. Okay, and then now we can just update our config further. So here we'll just say config.alias equals more answers.alias. And if they didn't specify an alias, it'll just be undefined, so it won't be inside of there. Then we need to write the file. So we already have fs in here. So let's do fs.writeFileSync. The path is going to be the current working directory and then a file named now.json. And actually, I didn't do that here, but let's create a variable, call it now path. That's going to be path.join with process.currentWorkingDirectory and now.json. Whoa, what just happened? That. So we want to write to that path. We're going to write json.stringify the config that we've created. I'm gonna indent it with 2 spaces, and it's UTF-8. And then this last question, would you like to deploy right now? So here we'll have if more answers dot deploy is true, then we need to deploy the app. Let's try it out. So we don't have a now.json in the folder, so let's go. What is the name of the project? Example. What's the type of the project? Let's just do static. What folder would you like to deploy? Period. That's fine with me. Would you like to specify an alias? No. Oh, that didn't work. What is the alias? So, specify alias. So this should only be asked if this is true. That seemed to work before. Am I doing anything different in here? Add build script. The name is specify alias. Let's try that again. Oh, it wrote the file. What? It shouldn't have. Now.json already exists. You want to overwrite it? Yes, let's overwrite it. That's the name. Let's do Node Express. That's good. Would you like to specify an alias? No. What is the alias? Weird. Would you like to deploy right now? Yes. Oh, I didn't await it. That's why. Woof. Yeah, I messed up. So you need inquire.prompt returns a promise, so you need to wait before you do anything else. Okay, let's try that again. Yes, let's overwrite it. Now config, we'll try static. Current directory, no, don't specify an alias. What am I doing wrong? I am awaiting all of these up here. If I look in, I just tried to do static. I am awaiting all of this. What's happening? I want to see what's happening there. Like, is this win function getting called? Try again. Yes, let's overwrite it. What is the name of the project? Now config. We're gonna try to do a static app. Yes. No. Oh. This needs to be confirm. Did anybody else catch it? Ugh. So confirm gives you the type of true false, but I had it as text. Ugh. Silly me. Now that should work. Okay, let me catch up on the chat. Oh, that's good. That's a good call. Abunga said you could allow them to specify multiple aliases, comma separated, and then split the string on commas. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so would you like to specify an alias? Yes. What is the alias? And then I'll do in parentheses, specify multiple separated by commas. Okay. And then here we're going to set this to split on commas. So we'll get multiple values. Cool. All right. Let's try again. Yes, let's overwrite it. What is the name of the project? Now config. We're going to do static. What folder would you like to deploy? This one. Would you like to specify an alias? No. Would you like to deploy right now? Yes. Cannot read property split of undefined. We'll say, so if they specified an alias, then we're going to split it. Otherwise, we don't want that property on there at all. Okay. Yes, let's overwrite. What is the name of the project? Let's do static. Would you like to specify an alias? Yes. What is the alias? Specify multiple separated by commas. So let's do example, who, what, when, where, how. Would you like to deploy right now? No. Done. And let's see what it did. Yeah, so we have these aliases there. We should probably remove the any spaces on them. So split them, and then map them, trim them to remove the empty spaces. Cool. Let's see what happens if we only specify one alias. If we only specify one alias, it still makes it an array. I think technically that's okay. Like if we look at the now documentation, yeah, it can be an array of one. That's cool. Okay. The last thing we need to handle is if they say yes to deploy, how are we going to do that? Well, we're probably going to do process.exec or spawn. Node.js spawn process. Child process. Yeah, so this is an example of like spawning the ls command. And then outputting the stuff to standard out. The only issue with that though is when you deploy with now, it has lots of really interesting output and like little spinny bars and stuff like that. And if we try to spawn the process, I don't think we're going to get the same type of output. So I'm taking that off the list. We are not going to deploy. Okay. So we write the file. We then say all done. Ta-da emoji. That one. Type now to deploy. And then we'll exit the process with no errors. Okay, we definitely need more emojis. What is the name of the project? Is there like a thinking person? Yeah, we'll do that one. What type of project? Let's do a ninja. Is there no ninja? What about a samurai? We'll do a box. Would you like to specify an alias? What can we do for alias? Do robot. What is the alias? Okay, cool. Now.json already exists. Let's do like a do not enter. And we'll do a, like one of those. Cool. Let's just do a rocket ship. Oh, no. Rocket ship is synonymous with deploy, so we'll put a rocket ship there. What is the alias? What's a good emoji for this? Do the poop emoji. We'll do the silhouette. I think that kind of makes sense. I'm gonna see if I can actually do a new line in the term. I'm gonna do a slash in there because that's like a really long question. Okay, and then let's add more emojis to all these. What is the build directory? Can we do a magnifying glass? Do you want to add or update a now build script in your package.json? This one we're gonna show that box because that is the package.json. What is the build command? We'll do flowers. For Node Express, there's only one question. What is the path to your Express entry point? For this, we'll do a rainbow. And then for static, what folder would you like to deploy? We'll do the magnifying glass. This is obviously the most important part of this entire video, is adding all these emojis. Okay, so let's do this. Let's delete this now.json that got created. Let's remove now build from our package.json, and let's give it a try. What is the name of your project? Now config. What type of project? We'll do static. What folder would you like to deploy? That one. Would you like to specify an alias? Yes. Oh, so the new line actually worked. Specify multiple separated by comma. Example. Hello. What? All done. Type now to deploy. And so it created this now.json. It has our aliases in there. Great. Great. Okay, that's awesome. So one thing we need to do is specify a bin, what is it called? We need to tell npm what to do when this command is run. So like earlier I did npx now-config, and it says command not found. So I believe in the package.json we can specify a command. And the command is now-config, I think. Let's look this up. Creating a package.json. Let's see. Oh, is there a bin? Yeah, bin. Okay. A lot of packages have one or more executable files that they'd like to install into the path. npm makes this pretty easy. In fact, it uses this feature to install the npm executable. To use this, simply supply a bin field in your package.json, which is a map of the command name to local file. Okay. If you have a single executable and its name should be the name of the package, then you can just supply it as a string. So for example, bin is just path to program. So I think we can do this. Bin is source index.js. Okay, and the name of my package is now config, so the command should be now config. Cool. One way to test this out is to do npm link -g, I think. I don't know if the -g is necessary, but what this will do is it will install this globally, but it's going to install the current directory that I'm in, and then we can test it out. Link should never be global, so let's just do npm link. Okay, so it put it in my path, and it's pointing here. So because it's now in my path, if I do now-config, awesome. It tried to run the file, but right now I'm getting a syntax error. I do need to specify what type of script this is. Shebang node, something like that. Add interpreter, no such file or directory. I need to figure out how do I specify the interpreter. Maybe I need a relative path. No, because it is trying to run the file. Anybody else know? Let's see. What if we look at, for example, like the Vue CLI to see how it does it? Let's find it. So we look at the Vue CLI. Let's go to their GitHub. And if we look at their package.json, they have, do they have a bin? They don't have a bin. Git hooks, scripts, workspaces. You know, I think the Vue CLI is now in the main Vue repo. Let's see. So if you go to Vue, I think it has nested, yeah, packages. No? Huh. Packages. Here we go. At Vue. CLI. Package.json. Okay, bin is, so they have an executable called Vue, and it's bin/vue.js. And if we look at bin/vue.js, here it is. Shebang, user bin, env node. That's what we need. Okay, now let's try it. Hey! It worked. Okay. And this should do it. Node express. What's the path? You want to alias it? Yes. Test. All done. And it created it. Cool. I like it. Okay, so now I'm gonna unlink it. npm unlink. Awesome. Let's go ahead and add everything and push it up. Let's remove this now.json. And actually, I'm gonna bump the version number. So we're gonna make this version 1.1. Yeah. Gonna push it up. And we'll do publish. Okay, I have to enter my one-time password. Okay, it published it. So now, anyone out there in the world, if you're watching, you can try it. Let's see. Let's just create an empty directory and try to deploy something. So, just call it like testing now config. We'll create an index.html file. Open up code in this directory. And we'll just say testing with an h1 that says hello now config. Okay, so in this directory, if I do npx now-config, it should try to download the latest. And it'll ask me the questions. Okay, what's the name of the project? Testing now config is good. What's the type? This is just a static. What folder do you want to deploy? I want to deploy the current one that we're in. Do I want to specify an alias? No. All done. Type now to deploy. So now if I type now, it's going to try to deploy. And moment of truth. It worked! Cool. So yeah, that's it. I think we did it. So anyone that wants to run it locally, just try I see what Hexception is mentioning, and yes, I saw that as well, but I think I can, yeah, I'm not gonna say it out loud. Okay. Yeah, you could type this in your terminal, try to deploy something. You could also do npm install-g now-config. And then after it's installed globally, you can just do now-config. And look at this. Now.json already exists. Would you like to overwrite it? No. Let's try again. Yes, let's overwrite it, and then it'll ask us questions. Cool. We did it. We did it. All right. I'm sure there are lots of other things we could add to this project. And there are lots of other now deployment types. So if anyone has other types of projects that they deploy with now and they'd like to make a pull request, feel free. Because there's things like Next, Gatsby, lots of other project types that people could get help with in terms of generating that project type. Awesome. Any last thing? Oh, Hexception says it works on Windows. Nice. Nice. That's awesome. I'm surprised that it worked first go on Windows. Cool. Top Vines had the answer. It took me a while to find it, but shebang. So pound bang user bin env space node. And so basically what that does, and we did this on our index.js file, what this does is it basically runs this as a shell script, but it's not bash. I don't know if you heard that, but people are popping fireworks outside. But it's not a bash script, it's not Python. And so this tells the terminal how to interpret this script, and in this case it uses Node to interpret it. So yeah. And Kelly has an interesting suggestion. You could wrap the tool in like a bash file. And then if this exits with a successful exit code, like if it exits with 0, we could then decide to deploy it. But if it exits with 1, we don't. That's a good suggestion. I think I'm going to end it there, though, because I've been streaming for a little over 2 hours, but this was super fun. So check out now config on NPM. Yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for all the suggestions, and thanks for hanging out with me while we do this. Tomorrow night will not be code katas, but I'm actually going to build a soundboard. Actually, let me just give you a demo of that. 1 second. So I mentioned that this upcoming weekend I'm actually going to do a Code Kata's Hot Wings challenge where I eat progressively spicier hot wings as I solve code katas. And this is actually the so I made this app on Sunday where you can see the list of all the hot sauces from the show Hot Ones. And it'll show you the Scovilles. We built this Scoville meter in this app with React. But I actually purchased, let's see, I think from season 2. Yeah, I have Mega Death Sauce, which is 550,000 Scovilles. I have Zombie Apocalypse, I think was in, season 4, which is rated at 100,000, but might be upwards of 500,000 Scovilles. I also have Chiba Gold, which was season 8. That's 25,000. I have Pain is Good, which is about 13,000, and I have Sriracha. So the idea is I'm going to eat a spicy chicken wing and then try to solve a code kata, and then eat a spicier chicken wing and try to solve another code kata. But if you've ever watched the Hot Ones show, they have lots of sound effects. So like when people like are really getting hit with the heat or like something interesting happens, there's like a hit, like they're freaking out because the hot sauce is so hot. So I have a bunch of these sound effects, and tomorrow I'm gonna build a soundboard that I can use while eating those spicy hot wings and solving those code katas. So that way it will be a little more interesting and have more of a dramatic effect. I don't like that one. So this is like, you're eating the spicy wing, it's not so bad, it's building, it's really spicy! Cool. So I found this cinematic sound effect pack, and tomorrow I'm going to build a soundboard with a lot of these sounds that I'll use during the stream when I am eating spicy hot wings and solving code challenges. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah. Yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Check it out now-config on npmjs.com. And we'll see you tomorrow. Wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night. Until next time, here's this.